Good evening and thank you for staying with us right here on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. My name is Esther Mwachiku and here are the top stories. Afenifere leader Pa Ayo Adebanjo dies at 96. Federal government sets up Power Rangers to stop electricity vandalization. Canada reacts to CDS Musa's visa denial. Gambaryan alleges National Security Advisor Chief Ribadu disgraced Nigeria in the United States stopped Biden from meeting President Tinubu. Binance executive reveals lawmakers who demanded 150 million naira bribe. And Rep spokesperson Agbase reacts to allegation of requesting bribe from Binance executive. Details now. Thank you for staying with us. A prominent leader of the Pan-Yoruba social culture organization Afenifere, Pa Ayo Adebanjo, has passed away at the age of 96. He died peacefully this morning, February 14, 2025, at his residence in Lekki, Lagos State. The family confirmed his passing in a statement made available to newsmen today. He died this morning at his residence. Adebanjo, a distinguished lawyer, former organizing secretary of the Action Group and national leader of Afenifere, was a fearless advocate for democracy and justice. He is survived by his 94-year-old wife, Chief Christy Ayo Adebanjo, along with children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The family said, and I quote, "We will forever cherish this commitment to fighting for truth, equity, and justice. His belief and struggle for a truly independent and progressive Nigeria was total, and this he fought for until he breathed his last breath." The family disclosed that consultations are ongoing with Adebanjo's friends, associates, burial. Details of the funeral arrangements will be announced in due course. A condolence register has been opened at his residence at 8 Ayo Adebanjo Close, Lekki Phase 1, Lagos, as well as his country home in Isonya Ogbo near Ijebu-Ode, Ogun State. The statement was signed on behalf of the family by Mrs. Ayotunde Ate, Mrs. Adiola Aziz, and Mr. Obafemi Ayo Adebanjo. Still on the world news at 6, the federal government has unveiled plans to set up a specialized unit known as Power Rangers, which will be responsible for protecting electricity infrastructure across the country from vandalization. The Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, who made the disclosure today during a Monitor television interview, explained that the Power Rangers will be formed with personnel from the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps. The minister said the primary mission of the Power Rangers will be to prevent the vandalism of power infrastructure, which has led to incessant widespread blackouts throughout the nation. According to him, each sector should have specific arms within the civil defense to cater for needed protection instead of having a generalized task of protecting critical national assets, which was the case before. Now, the Canada High Commission in Nigeria has responded to a statement from Chief of Defense Staff General Christopher Musa that the Canadian embassy denied him and other top military officers visas. You'll recall that General Musa and top military officers who were supposed to be in Canada on Wednesday were denied visas by the Canadian embassy on Tuesday. The Chief of Defense Staff narrated the disappointing ordeal on Thursday while giving a lecture at the Maiden National Association of the Institute for Security Studies in Abuja. The visa issue also generated condemnation from the National Security Advisor, Ribadu, who told Canada they can go to hell for denying General Musa's visa. The Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, also described the visa denial as a disrespect to Nigeria. However, in a brief statement on its X handle today, the Canada High Commission said for privacy purposes, it would not provide any comment on the visa issue of the persons involved. Now, former Binance head of crime compliance, Gambaryan, has accused the National Security Advisor, Ribadu, of embarrassing Nigeria in the international scene. Gambaryan alleged that Ribadu's action stopped former U.S. President Joe Biden from meeting with President Bola Tinubu during the last United Nations General Assembly UNGA. Posting on X, the former Binance executive said Ribadu also disgraced Nigeria before the former U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. According to Gambaryan, Ribadu created an international mess while overestimating his influence at the international scene. Gambaryan wrote, Ribadu even hired a U.S. law firm to negotiate my release, but this failed due to their incompetence and greed. Ribadu overstepped his authority and embarrassed Nigeria in front of U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Ribadu acting like someone angered the White House and led to diplomatic repercussions. The U.S. limited visas to the Nigerian delegation for UNGA, and Biden refused to meet with Tinubu until my situation was resolved. In the end, Ribadu overestimated his influence. They thought they could secure a quick win, but instead they created an international incident exposing his incompetence on a global scale. That's it for me for now. I don't want to dwell on this, but it's important for Nigerians to get the facts. I met amazing people in Nigeria. It's a shame that these Muppets are in charge. End quote. Meanwhile, Gambaryan, also who is the head of crime compliance at Binance, has publicly named 3 Nigerian lawmakers who allegedly demanded a $150 million bribe from him. The revelation comes months after his detention by Nigerian authorities. Mr. Gambaryan, alongside another Binance executive, was detained in Nigeria earlier this year. The Nigerian government accused the cryptocurrency exchange of money laundering and enabling financial crimes within the country, all in 2024. His detention became a diplomatic issue, with the United States government eventually stepping in to secure his release. Meanwhile, in a post on X today, Mr. Gambaryan named 3 lawmakers whom he claims demanded the hefty bribe in exchange for dropping the charges against Binance. Those named are Peter Akpanke, Philip Agbese, Deputy Spokesperson of the House of Representatives, and Ginger Obinna Onwusibe, Chairman of the House Committee on Anti-Corruption. Mr. Gambaryan claims that the bribery request took place during a meeting with members of the House of Representatives. According to him, the meeting was staged to look official, but he quickly realized it was a setup. Ribadu invited us to the official meeting, and walked through a Saad Abubakar. Another key figure in the situation was Hama Adama Beloji. Ogunjobi was just a pawn. They used him too. This was sold as a friendly meeting with the National Security Advisor, the head of SEC, and the CBN governor, and includes the discussion of the bribe that was solicited by the House of Representatives. The $26 billion figure they kept pushing publicly as some mystery money escaping Nigeria is complete BS. This information was provided in response to their request and was simply cumulative trade data for Nigerians on the platform. The money did not leave Nigeria. It was just people buying and selling crypto. For example, if you trade $100 100 times, that's $10,000 in trade volume. But in reality, you only used $100. Again, just another example of them lying to cover up their BS investigation. They lied about Nadeem escaping during mosque prayers. In reality, he returned and escaped afterward. I don't know exactly how he managed to flee. He emailed me in November, but we haven't discussed the details of his escape. It's possible he paid someone off, but I have no proof. If Beloji had simply checked his passport for a visa, he would have realized that Nadeem did not use that passport to travel to Nigeria. They sent a letter to the U.S. Embassy and the British High Commission, falsely claiming that we were voluntarily participating in strategic talks. This was a blatant lie. Nadeem did not escape lawful detention. He was being held illegally. Beloji even admitted that he would fabricate evidence to obtain a court order to detain us for 14 days. Once the court order expired, they were unable to get an extension from the judge. At that point, they continued holding us illegally and had no justification for doing so. There was a lot of noise about using Interpol to capture Nadeem. As someone who has been involved in multiple extradition cases, I can confidently say this was a joke. Extradition is a lengthy legal process, and no national or rational judge in Kenya or wherever would ever approve extradition for someone who escaped illegal detention at the hands of rogue law enforcement, especially when that detention involved holding employees hostage to pressure their employer all noise. They tried to use us to violate international privacy laws by demanding user data on all Nigerians to target opposition members, allegedly manipulating the price of the naira. However, they all knew that the naira's devaluation was a direct result of Tinubu's monetary policy, which depegged the naira from the dollar. I am not saying this policy decision was wrong, but everyone understood that removing government intervention would lead to extreme devaluation. Instead of acknowledging this, they used Binance as a scapegoat. End quote. You're currently listening to the World News at 6 right here in Voice of the People, 90.3 FM. We'll take a very short break. When we return, we'll take more news and head into a news analysis. We'll be joined via the telephone with Barrister Fred Inzako, who is a political, national social affairs commentator, also an economic strategist, to respond to some questions posed at him. Do kindly stay with us. Welcome back. You're still listening to the World News at 6 right here on Voice of the People, 90.3 FM. Now, the deputy spokesperson of the House of Representatives, Honorable Philip Agbase, has denied allegations made by Gambaryan, an executive of the cryptocurrency giant Binance. Gambaryan had claimed that Agbase was among those who demanded a whopping $150 million bribe. Agbase described the accusations as baseless and issued an ultimatum to Gambaryan, demanding he provide evidence or retract his claims within 7 days or face legal consequences. These allegations are false. I was not part of any meeting with any Binance executive regarding money for any purpose. The lawmaker clarified that he is not a member of the Committee on Economic and Financial Crimes. According to his account, he had only visited his colleague, Honorable Peter Akankwe, during a meeting involving the committee and Binance exec representatives. Agbase emphasized that any further questions regarding the issue should be directed to the committee, not him. He also clarified that he has no involvement with cryptocurrency. In the statement, Agbase demanded that Gambaryan produce evidence linking him to the alleged bribery. Gambaryan and his associate, who escaped from prison, should return to the EFCC and defend themselves. Instead of trying to implicate me, they should focus on addressing the allegations against them. Agbase therefore warned that should Gambaryan fail to provide evidence of his claims, he'll be left with no choice but to pursue legal action. I actually have joining me via the telephone Barrister Fred Inzako. Barrister Fred, good evening and thank you for joining us on the World News at 6.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Barrister Fred, one would have thought this very supposed beautiful Friday, that since it's a love Friday, that everyone will be calm and serene. It started off with USAID implosion, which came up yesterday by one of the House of Reps member or parliamentary member, whose name is Scott Perry, disclosing that apparently the United States of America was involved in funding terrorism in Nigeria and other countries. Obviously, these terrorists are ISIS, ISWAP, Taliban, as well as Al Qaeda. After this exposure, he now told, the people in the house there that these funds were used by the international collaborators to cause instability, and this is basically done through the USAID funds. That is why no projects were executed. They couldn't see any physical or viable project executed. Now, we haven't even rested from that exposure and that divergence. We had David Hundeyi collaborating all of this that we thought was a conspiracy theory, which made a lot of people go back during the era of former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan and all the travels he went through with Boko Haram being sponsored by the then president, former President Barack Obama, then in the United States of America, who stunted the help or refused to provide help in tackling the menace of Boko Haram at the time. Then Gambaryan now came to disclose to us that 150 million naira bribe was actually being asked for by some House of Rep members, and that there was no escape whatsoever, that everything was done through this supposed security advices. How would you react to all of these exposures or this kind of worm being opened?
Well, I want to say that it is very important that we do certain things. One, we don't sweep any seemingly credible allegation under the carpet. But two, we must be very careful in analyzing or assimilating any allegation. Because people can level wide allegations that are beyond human comprehension or imagination. Now the Mr. Gambaryan of Binance has been talking and has been leveling allegations that the people ask him for 150 million naira bribe. The critical question will be, who are the people? And if he mentions the people, he should also bring the evidence, because he who alleges must prove. That is the doctrine of evidence. Anybody who alleges must prove. And it is not enough to crucify a man on mere allegation. The person who is alleging must bring substantial proof with which to nail the fellow who asked for the bribe. And if eventually he gave the bribe, it will be easy for him to bring proof. But if he didn't give the bribe, then I doubt if he will succeed in bringing a credible proof. Then that will now be a mere blackmail, in a manner of speaking. But you see, all these things are, even the congressman, Mr. Scott Perry, a U.S. congressman that was alleging that the money that came from U.S. aid were deployed towards financing of terror, is again an allegation that needs to be proven. Because the aid that comes from U.S. gets to the hands of Nigerian federal government. And if he alleges that the money is used to finance terror, he is indirectly indicting federal government directly at the finance terrorism.
Exactly, Barrister Fred Nzako. He said that the United States of America using USAID fund in connivance with local collaborators. Obviously, he indicted. He made it. In fact, we saw interviews being held as to some mercenaries that were deployed at the time to eradicate or fight off Boko Haram, and they made statements as to the fact that they were derailed from carrying out that activity at the time. Funds were being paused, and even when Jonathan really tried to pull full on that the government then, who was being the change of government, which was in 2015 by former President Muhammadu Buhari, they stopped them from continuing that. Funds for that ceased, and they were wondering how come Boko Haram is still a menace in this part of the world if there was no local aid along with international collaborators. Also, the Chief of Defense Staff had complained, I think two months ago via an interview, that the sponsors of Boko Haram and ISWAP they were using hard currencies, and they were asking the United Nations to please help them investigate where these hard currencies are coming from and how these individuals are sponsored with hard currencies to buy weapons that even the Nigerian army has not been able to acquire. So are you trying to tell me that those are wild allegations coming from the House of Rep by Scott Perry?
I cannot agree with anybody that Nigeria government will be involved in sponsorship or funding of terrorism in the country. Persons in government may be involved. Mark my word. Remember that President Jonathan said that some people who were sympathetic to Boko Haram were even in his cabinet.
Yes.
So persons in government may be involved. I cannot be certain about that. But I can be very strong in my opinion that government will never, as a government, be involved in sponsorship of terror in Nigeria. So the allegation by Mr. Scott Perry is neither here nor there. And again, that needs to be thoroughly investigated. All these things are gaining traction in the public opinion, mainly because Nigerian government have not done what they should have done. Remember when the 400 names were given to them by UAE as individuals who were involved in terror financing under the President Muhammad Buhari's government, and the government swore to prosecute those names. Up to today, we never had any other thing about those names, and there was no prosecution. Those are the optics that create a wrong impression in the mind of the people, especially those outside Nigeria. So it becomes easy for them to accuse government of being involved because government did not do what they are supposed to have done. But failure to do a certain act is not a conclusive evidence that the government was involved. If they accuse the government of failure to prosecute non-terrorists or prosecute those who sponsor terrorism, yes, one can agree to that. But I will never agree to such an allegation that Nigerian government was directly involved in terror sponsorship.
Barrister Fred Nzako, can you recall a former army chief, I don't know if it was Ihe Jirika, one of them, who actually came out and told us that indeed there are moves within the military. They were actually putting on strategic efforts to fight Boko Haram when it really got intense during the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari. He actually stipulated at the time that there were moves within the military. Also, I want you to recall BBC African Eye. This is clearly evidential. You can actually check it out on YouTube. That documentary, it was a 1-year documentary. Before they were able to get to the insurgents in their enclaves, it took a very, very long time. The BBC African Eye asked questions which actually caused a rabble-rousing in Nigeria's polity. These insurgents admitted that they indeed have persons who give them information from the government of the day. That's number one. They also talked about the fact that there was a sponsorship coming from somewhere, from top echelons in government. So would we say again, as you are saying, that you refuse to believe that the government does not enable? These are top security persons who are actually making all this revelation. And a documentary, live documentary, was conducted where these individuals were testifying to the fact that they are indeed being supported by top government agents. Barrister Fred, the question is not even about all of this. The thing is, all of this is coming now 3 weeks after Donald Trump took over for the second term. Are we expecting more surprises, more exposure about certain secret dealings, between America and upsetting the polity in some African countries?
We must draw a clear line of difference between actions or inactions of people in government from those of government that say government strictly pencil, government strictly speaking. The allegations are against people in government. No matter how highly those people are, they acted personally and individually. They never acted on behalf of government. So that distinction must be clearly made. But the accusers have failed to draw that distinction between actions of government as an institution and the actions of officials of government acting personally and individually. It is important that we draw that distinction. And having said so, I expect that there's a new dynamic in international politics with the ascendancy of Donald Trump for the second term. Even in the Middle East, in the war between Russia and Ukraine, in the relationship between America and other parts of the world, I expect all those changes. But in international affairs and international politics, the more things change, the more they seem to remain the same.
All right.
After all the hula baloo, the world will still remain stable. And that is why, as a country, we must be very careful the way we receive and profess all these allegations coming from outside. Yes, we must do what we should do, but we should not timidly take in these allegations, hook, line, and sinker, just because they were said by U.S. congressmen.
Barrister Fred, when you say timidly, our Chief of Defense Staff just last month was part of an interview. I think it was with Al Jazeera or one of those international media houses, where he actually stated that hard currencies were sponsoring the invasion of arms and weapons. This is our Nigeria's Chief of Staff, where he called on the United Nations to please help them trace the hard currency, that they do not have the capacity to do so. What does that tell you? I mean, in the literal sense of it, what does that tell you?
If you have naira and you exchange it for dollar or for pounds or for euro, you have that currency in your hand. And we know that within us, so many times, even some past governors have admitted giving money to terrorists in order to pacify them and dissuade them from continuing terrorism. Such funds may have been used to change the foreign currency. To the extent that even when there was exchange of Naira in 2022-2023, the news studied that central bank moved their bullion bank to the border to go and change the money in the hands of men and women whose source of earnings are not clear. So, I mean, these are known facts. But of course, it does not mean that once you have foreign currency, then it gets from government. There are 1,001 ways and avenues for one to have foreign currency because it is not restricted to government offices and that.
Barrister Friday Nzako, let's look at Gambaryan accusing the National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu of embarrassing Nigeria on the international scene. He alleged that Ribadu's action stopped former U.S. President Joe Biden from meeting with President Bola Tinubu during the last United Nations General Assembly. According to him, he said that Ribadu even hired a U.S. law firm to negotiate his release, but this failed due to incompetence, according to him, and greed, and that Ribadu overstepped his authority and embarrassed Nigeria in front of U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. So, according to him, he said that Ribadu's attitude angered the White House, which led to diplomatic repercussions. The U.S. limited visas to the Nigerian delegation for hunger, and Biden refused to meet with Tinubu until his situation was resolved. Meanwhile, we now saw an exposure on the People's Gazette. They were the ones who actually exposed that the condition the president had given to Joe Biden, which I'm sure is along the same time with when he attended the hunger summit, was that he could release Gambaryan if he's able, you understand, to speak or appreciate him to the American government. So how would you react to what Tigran is saying? Would you call it a wild allegation without proof?
It's Nigeria. I don't blame Gambaryan. If Nigeria was the one with honesty and dignity, a character like Gambaryan will not have the audacity to shoot a level wide accusation against Nigeria as a country, against of Nigerian officials in a reckless manner that is doing so. But it's only latching on the psychology of the fact that the international impression of Nigeria is low. Even the local impression, the impression Nigerians have of Nigeria as a country, because of the type of character of the leaders that we have, is low. And that's why anybody can just wake up and come out from the corner and start to accuse Nigeria and Nigerian officials recklessly the way Amana Gambaryan is doing it.
Well, this whole thing, Barrister Friday Nzako, I'm sorry, hold on. This whole thing is coming. This whole thing is coming as a response of what transpired recently between the Chief of Defense Staff and some top brass military officers not being granted visa by the Canadian government. And so when Nuhu Ribadu yelled that, you know, they can go to hell, Gambaryan called him a hypocrite for making that statement. That was when we began to see all of these revelation from Gambaryan today.
Even our citizens will compile Nuhu Ribadu by saying that his outburst was very unstatesmanly and very undiplomatic. He was not the one that was supposed to have responded. We have Minister of Foreign Affairs, and we have Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, and we have a whole Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Nigeria has about 94 missions around the world. The National Security Advisor obviously was not the appropriate person to respond to the visa denial by Canada of the Chief of Defense Staff. So as much as we could warn our National Security Advisor to be more decorous and more diplomatic and handling issues that have to do with international diplomacy and the relations with other countries, that does not give the Binance man any latitude to begin to criticize. We know where our wrongs are. He doesn't need to tell us what the wrongs are. We know. And whatever reason that makes Canada to deny the CDS visa is an insult to Nigeria and needs to be explained to Nigeria. Otherwise, it is enough for Nigeria to declare the High Commissioner of Canada in Nigeria a persona non grata and then demand that he be withdrawn from Nigeria. because it is a very terrible, grave insult for the country. But even thereafter, I expected that the office of the Minister of Foreign Affairs to be the one to handle the issue.
Barrister Fred. Barrister Fred.
So the school of thought, I believe that the CDS wouldn't have even gone for the visa by himself.
Barrister Fred
should have been handled by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Barrister Fred, the Canadian government
of Nigeria.
The Canadian government has actually reacted. The Canada High Commission in Nigeria responded to a statement from the Chief of Defense Staff, and they actually disclosed that they would not actually reveal the reason why they denied him a visa, but they narrated as disappointing the ordeal that transpired while the Chief of Defense Staff was supposed to travel for the Invictus game. And also we recall that that visa denial generated quite a lot of controversy. But in a very brief statement on their X handle, the Canada High Commission said for privacy purposes, they would not provide any comment on the visa issues of the persons involved. A couple of persons have actually, interpreted it to be that there could be high top security reasons. Some people feel that it was because of the Chief of Defense Staff recent exposure. That is why some certain things are being kept under the lid. But Barrister Fred Nzako, let me ask you this very important question. All of this coming up, how do you think it reflects on Nigeria as a people and its government? The cesspool of corruption, which has led to insecurity in most parts of the country. The cesspool of corruption, which internationally is not giving us a good name or a good face. If you say that Gambaryan is giving a wild allegation, he gave a detailed account of what transpired, how he was lured to Nigeria, illegally detained, and all the process he went through, which was quite a travel for him. So how would you describe Nigeria, the Nigerian government, the Nigerian top executives, and this recent melee that seems to be on them? How would you describe it?
There seems to be an international synergy to force Nigeria to do what is right. There seems to be an international pressure coming from all parts of the world, especially from America and the allied countries, to make Nigeria to live up to the expectation. Nigeria as a country and Nigerian leaders have, for a very long time, consistently failed the black race. We know this, and we have been complaining about it. There are problems all around the world, but every people will want to protect their environment. They want to secure their people and ensure that they make it more meaningful to their people. And the perception outside Nigeria is that Nigeria is not making enough effort to secure the lives of Nigerian people, and that is why there is a large number of people migrating out of Nigeria, even through unorthodox means, leading to a large number of illegal migrants scattered around the advanced world. The people who are at the receiving end of this illegal migration are not happy, and they will stop at nothing to press the Nigerian government to do what is right and make the environment more livable for the Nigerian citizens, so that they will stop this kind of migration pressure. Nigeria has become a country with the largest number of illegal migrants in the whole world. And it is a worrisome development. And that is why you're seeing all the tendencies pushing against Nigeria and calling Nigeria all manner of names and dragging Nigeria around to do what is right. In the international circle, it has to be handled diplomatically by the Nigerian government to ensure that they do not pour petrol onto an already raging fire. That's exactly what we need to do, and come back home to retool our system and minimize the rate of corruption, which has led Nigeria to be insulted. The turn around say Nigeria is a fantastically corrupt country. It is the same Donald Trump that described Nigeria in a very unprintable way as a cheat code country. I mean, every Nigerian must be worried about such appendages and about such insult on the sovereignty and integrity of Nigeria as a nation. A country that is the largest black country in the world with the hugest quantum of natural resources in very good telematic environment devoid of all manner of natural disaster.
All right, Barrister Friday Nzako, and on a
stop insulting ourselves in the Committee of Nations.
Yeah. Barrister Friday Nzako, on a final note, the president had told us we're going to have a conference, right, where a lot of Nigerians will be able to express themselves and call out their leaders, especially those whom they think are not representing and not doing well enough. We've not heard about when that committee will be set up so that we can have a sense of understanding on where this country is going and basically how some things are reflecting on the country negatively. It's actually affecting a couple of persons personally in these countries that they reside in. On a final note, do we think that just 3 weeks of Trump's resumption, that there will still be more exposure that would indict Nigeria?
Then obviously the assumption of office of Trump will, while it shakes all parts of the world, it will shake Nigeria, obviously. Because they are very particular about Nigeria because they know the quantum resources that we have. They also know that Nigerian professionals excel abroad. And they wonder why they will not be able to excel locally here in the country and make Nigeria the hub of Africa in terms of welfare, good governance, and development. So I expect that the pressure will continue, and I also hope that we'll learn from that and be able to hold our leaders accountable and make our country a much better environment for the citizens and for humanity.
Barrister Friday Nzako, thank you so much for taking your time and sharing your perspective with us on the World News at 6. I sincerely do appreciate you, and happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you very much. To wrap up here again are the top stories. Afenifere leader Pa Ayo Adebanjo dies at 96. Federal government sets up Power Rangers to stop secure electricity vandalization. Canada reacts to CDS Musa's visa denial. Gambaryan alleges NSA Chief Ribadu disgraced Nigeria and US stopped Biden from meeting President Tinubu. Binance executive reveals lawmakers who demanded $150 million bribe. Top Reps members indicted. Rep spokesperson Agbase reacts to allegation of requesting bribe from Binance executive. That's a wrap on the World News at 6. My name is Esther Mwachiku. Good evening. Thank you for staying with us. Good evening.